You're listening to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation.
Hello there.
All right, we are back for another episode of For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation. It has been a little bit since we have recorded an episode. We'll get into that into 1 second, but it is I, Andrew, and Dominic back here once again because there is a new Star Wars show airing. Skeleton Crew is finally here, and we are here to talk about the 2-episode premiere titled This Could Be a Real Adventure and Way, Way Out Past the Barrier. Very quirky, very fun episode titles for this show so far. But just to real quickly go over why we've been gone since I think August was our last post. So our last episode we did was our Tales of the Empire episode, where we covered that miniseries. We recorded that, I think, in like late July. We uploaded that the week the Acolyte got canceled. So that was just I was just editing that, and at one point we were talking about like, oh yeah, some cool stuff we can see in season 2, and I'm just like, oh, that did not age well at all. So then, as we know, around that time, the Star Wars fandom just kind of like killed itself and just completely just died. And people got very angry, and rightfully so. And then that side was doing victory laps for weeks, and it was just not a fun time to be a Star Wars fan. And then just delays and personal stuff just kept the pod just kind of like just in limbo for a little bit. We were going to do an episode on the Lego special, but that never ended up happening. And then something happened in my neck of the woods in early November. And I was like, I'm done. I can't right now. So I deleted Twitter. I was off Twitter for a month, and I was just like, I need to take a break from the pod because that
was a very healthy move, my guy.
As much as I want to talk about Clone Wars right now before we get into Skeleton Crew, I just couldn't do it. I was just like, I need a break. Deleted it. I'm back now, but I'm trying to mainly use Blue Sky because I find it to just be more fun for me over there. I think it's a good sign, and I think for everyone there that's out there maybe wondering, hey, like, do I need a break from social media? If you're feeling that way, take it, because I had been using Twitter every day for probably 14 years, and I deleted the app entirely, and I thought I was going to struggle. I thought I was going to be back within like 2 days, and I just realized I didn't need it, and that's just something I've just never thought I'd be able to get to. Like, I don't need this thing, but like even as I've returned, and I'm using it still very limited because I want to ease my way back into things, and it's just like I still don't know where half the people I follow are. It's just like, where'd you go? Are you on Blue Sky? Are you on Twitter? Which one are you using?
100%. Like,
yeah,
just to like piggyback off of what you're saying. It's like, yeah, like the whole social media thing. I have tried very much to like make Blue Sky my primary source of social media like usage, like going forward, especially after November, because it may not be my neck of the woods, but I was like right there raging with all of you guys.
I am still shocked, not to interrupt, but I'm still shocked that a month after the election, it is still so much like election propaganda. Like in the ads and shit. And I'm just like, dude, it's over. He won.
Yeah.
Do your victory lap. But
exactly.
Like, you're
get over it, Elon.
I know. I know.
We were saying like just yesterday on the pod or like the day before how Twitter is the most unfriendly it has ever been for neurodivergent people, and I can say that confidently since we're both identify as neurodivergent. Mm-hmm. So there is so much like misinformation, so much energy that has to be expended just to like discern what is fact from fiction. There's so many bots, so you don't even know if like the person you're speaking to is a real person, and there's so much disingenuous action happening on that site. Case in point, the Acolyte getting cancelled, which was a it was an awful day because we were so optimistic for a second season. We were expecting they'd announce it at Celebration Japan, and there was so much cool stuff the first season had set up, you know, with the further mystery around Kaimir, hit the Osha's budding relationship with him, Darth Plagueis, Yoda being involved in investigating with like Venestra, and the whole like backstory like that they were hinting at with Venestra and Kaimir, like potential flashbacks, High Republic characters potentially from the books appearing in the show. That all sounded really exciting, and then Lucasfilm just quietly snatched it away from us. Well, Disney and Lucasfilm. And yeah, it was very insufferable to see, like, just the worst people on the internet, including Elon Musk even. Dude literally was trolling people as I was in a Twitter Spaces, like, lamenting the Acolyte's cancellation with a bunch of other Star Wars, like, podcasters. It was a crazy day. But, you know, we were all very much, I think, as like Star Wars fans, we were very like, it was a kind of a painful thing because we've been so invested in all of these different shows, all of these different narratives happening, even while they've been all these different stratas of like setting and plots, you know, with the Acolyte taking place hundreds of years before Mandalorian. We were all still invested in it, in this whole galaxy. And when a show like that gets cancelled, it harms your investment because you're like, well, how can I get invested in an ongoing narrative when you're just going to pull shows that you've invested a lot of time in otherwise? And, you know, especially with stuff being so up in the air regarding the movies, you know, like I'm still optimistic the Rey movie will get made, but obviously it's stressful when, you know, you see the news come up about like different writers coming and going and stuff.
Yeah,
but
we just had the news today that Mangold is like they're close to finishing a draft for Dawn of the Jedi. I'm like, this movie's been announced for 2 years. What do you mean finishing?
Please get it made. Come on, I'm living for that Dawn of the Jedi movie and for Daisy Ridley to return as Rey. But she's very positive about it, which is nice. I will say there's obviously like there's some glimmer of hope for the Acolyte. It was lovely to see people rally around like the petition initially, like that got that surge of signatures. And Manny Jacinto, bless him, has been nothing if not optimistic about it. Literally, he was just at a Chicago fan expo like just earlier this week, and he kept hinting about, oh, we might come back. And I'm like, you know, if you know something, Manny, then you're giving us all a little spark of hope, and that's what we need. So I feel like the Star Wars...
I do like that. There seems to be, and I have no idea what the future of that show is, if there's even a future at all. But I do like how they haven't just immediately been like Leslie Headland going on some show and being like, here's all the plans we had. Like, here's what was going to happen. Here's, you know, Kymir's Darth name. Here's what was going to happen with Osha. And they're just keeping that a mystery for now. Like, eventually, I feel like we're going to learn this information in some way. But it means that it's still somewhat alive. Like the books, thankfully, the Vern book and the Jecki and Yord book are still happening. So that's good that they didn't pull like what happened with the Mando book and just scrap that. Like, and I was worried, like, because it was very doom and gloom the week this happened, and rightfully so, because people were wondering, like, are they even going to keep it on Disney Plus because of what happened with Willow? And thankfully, none of that stuff has happened yet. But it was so disheartening that even if the grifters and that side of the fandom wasn't the primary reason they canceled the show, and it was just the low viewership numbers like they were citing in their statements, it still gave them that like little bit of like wiggle room to be like, oh, but it is this, because now it's like, oh, Lucasfilm is just going to be playing it safe, and we're going to see more of the stuff that works for them, like the Mandoverse and the stuff with Luke, and, you know, relying too much on nostalgia. Because the thing I said going into the Acolyte was, the thing I'm looking forward to the most, if this show is a success, is not necessarily the show itself, but is what it means for Star Wars, because it means these outside the box properties can get developed more and we can see more of them. And then the show got canceled. So now I'm like, I don't know what we're going to get. I was admittedly detached a bit during the lead up to Skeleton Crew, specifically the last month, because I was just off the social medias, but I was still decently excited for the show. I had been
Mm.
championing it for a year plus, but I was cautiously optimistic going in. But I watched the first two episodes, and I gotta say, before I even get into my own opinion on it, can I just say how refreshing it is to have a Star Wars show come out and the main narrative surrounding the discourse isn't some bullshit about it being like, oh, it's woke, and oh, there's too many minorities in it, and just all this crap, bad writing, like, oh, bad writing, bad acting. None of this bad faith discourse shit, and just it being like, yeah, this is a good show. And
Yeah,
like universally, it seems to just be people enjoying it so far. Whether that
exactly.
lasts, we'll see. But it is so refreshing to see, because even like Andor, which is like the peak of like the Disney Plus Star Wars show stuff, to the extent of like how it was received critically and how it was received by the community as a whole. Even they had their, well, is this really Star Wars? This is just a sci-fi show. There's bricks and there's
Oh.
screws.
There's
I
no
haven't
Easter
seen
eggs in Andor, man.
I haven't seen that. And even my biggest critiques that I had with the trailer seem to be answered in these first two episodes, because it seems to be intentional.
Mm.
So as we dive into our first two episodes, overall, I'll just say I quite enjoyed them. I wasn't in love with them. I'm not at that phase of the show yet, but I think it did a great job introducing us to these four lead characters. I'm already a fan of all of them. I'm liking the pirates as our main antagonists, and I'm liking this mystery surrounding At Attin. Also, I'm loving the score, and I'm loving the youthful whimsiness that this show has, that I've just been eating up, and I've overall really enjoyed it so far. So, what have been your early impressions for Skeleton Crew? Because you told me you had a lot of thoughts to start things off.
Oh yeah, like I was I was very much in the same camp as you were, like going into it, where I was reasonably excited for a new Star Wars show, and the closer we got to it, the more I was kind of hopeful, seeing the trailers, that this was going to be the kind of show, especially after losing the Acolyte, the Star Wars fandom needed, like the fandom that the Star Wars fans that are still willing to engage with Star Wars and actually like invite these engage with these new Star Wars shows and movies. And I honestly, after watching these two episodes, it might change going forward. But those first two episodes, it really felt like the Amblin flavored bear hug of warmth and like fuzziness that we as Star Wars fans needed. Because like, you know, Scotty Holiday had a really good tweet about it, post on Blue Sky, and a tweet where he mentioned about how it reminds him of like a thing he never grew up with, but it still kind of has that feeling, and he still recognized it, because that's something I kind of related to, like growing up at like in the late 90s, early 2000s. There were certain Amblin films that I sort of did watch. Like I have a particular fondness for like the Don Bluth era of animation, like with American Tail, All Dogs Go to Heaven. That film is dark, by the way. I won't go on a tangent, but yeah, I have fondness for that Amblin era. E.T. I've never seen the Goonies, but the cultural effect of that movie was still in with me enough that I was able to recognize that in the trailers. And
Yeah.
I have to say, my biggest concern going into this was the same concern I think a lot of us had, especially again after the Acolyte being cancelled, is that this was going to feel a little too similar to Ahsoka and The Mandalorian, the New Republic era shows having a kind of a samey feeling. And I have to say, I did not have that problem at all. This felt very unique and very fresh, and that is 100% down to having John Watts here at the helm of this thing, and him having a very specific vision for this corner of the Star Wars galaxy, along with his co-writer, I believe Christopher Ford is his name.
Yes.
But yeah, Christopher Ford and John Watts, they did such a great job with the first episode, like just giving us the world of At Attin and making it feel so recognizably suburban America. yet also feeling Star Warsy enough that we accept it. We're like, yeah, this is sort of the Star Wars galaxy, but it's also different and kind of alien and remote enough that it feels different. Like there's a restlessness to being on the planet. It's not boring necessarily because there's all these cool little things that we'll get into, but by the end of the episode, when the kids like accidentally turn the spaceship on and it jets off into hyperspace, you are right there with them of feeling that this excitement.
It's so Amblin, and it's just so
it really is.
Everything about it. And just even like, because I was like, those movies were like obviously a thing for me growing up, but like I wasn't super like, that wasn't like movies I actively grew up with, you know, like another big influence, at least that I can tell from these first 2 episodes, is Stand By Me, which I didn't see until about 2-3 years ago for the first time. So like, but I've recognized them and I know their cultural influence. Stranger Things is obviously like very much linked to those Amblin properties, and it's very much on display here. Not really in the scares department, but just in the youthful child cast going on this adventure with their space bikes, and it's so fun so far. But the big thing for me in the trailers that I was thrown off by was that suburban setting. And I kind of just like came to accept it. I was just like, okay, this is different. It doesn't feel quite Star Wars to me. And there's always that debate of, well, what is Star Wars? And people will use that in bad faith. Oh, it breaks canon. And I wasn't anything like that. I was just like, this is really different. And then obviously when they go into the ship, they go into the more familiar Star Wars galaxy. But what I loved about these 2 episodes is that it was very clear from almost the get-go that this was intentionally done. Because At Attin is very clearly shrouded in mystery, and it just feels off. There's little things like the fact that we discover in the 2nd episode that the currency, the credits that Wim's father gives to him are Old Republic credits.
Oh, that's so exciting.
If you listen in a keen eye when that teacher is talking at the school, they're talking about the Republic, not the New Republic, the Republic. There's just little things like that. The fact that it's this unfamiliar setting, that it feels, you know, familiar to us, but unfamiliar as a Star Wars viewer. And then when you see all these mysteries like SM-33 not having At Attin on his memory at all, or all these pirates being like, oh, this is the mythical city of like treasure or whatever they refer to it as. There's very clearly something going on. And that is, we had, you know, hashtag what happened on Brendock last season. We got to come up with a new one for At Attin this year, because my thinking cap is on, and I'm just very much intrigued of where this mystery is going. But we are introduced to our 4 characters, and I do love that it's not what I was expecting, because watching these trailers and watching a lot of these similar properties and movies that Skeleton Crew was inspired by, the friend group is usually a thing from the beginning. It's established from the beginning, whereas in Skeleton Crew, it's 2 separate ones. You know, Wim and Neil are the 2 friends, and then KB and Fern are the 2 friends. And when they first meet, they don't like each other. Fern is being mean to Wim. They're tricking them to dig up the Jedi temple. And that was all different to me. And I think having them grow throughout the series is going to be really nice to see. And John Watts, we brought him up. Such a great choice to helm this series, because the dude is just a master with these coming-of-age elements. I think that's what makes his MCU Spider-Man trilogy work as well as it does, is the coming-of-age elements are just as strong as the superhero elements, which is something I think only Miss Marvel has really done to an equal extent in the MCU, is have those growing up, coming of age, high school elements here. And the kids here are a bit younger. They're probably middle school age, maybe late elementary school. But it still has that same feeling. And it has a childhood whimsy. I don't remember who put this tweet out. It might have been Katrina Dennis, our friend of the show. It might not have been. But it was like, Skeleton Crew feels like the first Star Wars property where the childhood whimsy and feeling of nostalgia is through the child cast itself, being having the cast be mainly children and seeing the Star Wars galaxy through the lens of a child, whereas in all other Star Wars stuff it's just the whimsy of the filmmakers and having this love for this property that they grew up with for a lot of the newer Star Wars stuff. Having it be through the lens of Wim looking at his hollow stories of Jedi and thinking that this ship is it's a buried Jedi temple and all that stuff I just love.
I love all his little like I love the kind of like the storybook screens that he was reading. The fact that they took the time to like translate them all into Orabesh. Like the minute I saw that, I was like, oh, Alex from Star Wars Explained, he's gonna have like some time. He's gonna have to really sink some time into that. And then he put a video out like a day later saying, oh, I've decrypted them all. That dude works hard at giving us Star Wars Easter egg goodness. But I agree with everything you said. Like the kids themselves are like fantastic. They all have very definable personalities, and what I like is that even though they're quite broad in some senses of their characterization, it really fits with the whole angle of them being kids. Because, like as you said about their ages, they're just at the point where they're moving out of middle school and into high school age, so they're just old enough to have a sense of like things, have a handle on things, sort of, but not old enough yet to like fully have control over everything. So like you mentioned the scene where Fern, Wim, Neil, and I can't believe I've forgotten the fourth kid's name. KB, thank you. Where they all meet for the first time outside the ship, and the interaction felt so natural as to how kids, with tension between them, would behave, where they're trying to sound grown up and they're trying to get one over on the other, and the tension is so clear that it's just really funny to like watch them try and be tough, especially Fern. Fern is interesting.
Fern is hilarious.
She's such a little ball buster.
I've been championing Neil the whole lead up to the show. He is my son, after all. And the more we get to see his family, the more I'm like, oh my god, I love this so much. And
the little baby one.
But in terms of like personality, Fern might be, because Neil is just like he's trademark sidekick character so far for Wim. Fern might be my favorite personality-wise so far. Just the way she's, oh yeah, I'm growing up, But then just like the little things, like the fact that she's still, as we see with the conversation from her mother, she's still top of her class, even though she's like, oh, this rebellious youth that, builds these space spikes and tries to race the tough guys and act super tough. And in the second episode, as we see, he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm your new captain because I killed the old captain.
I love that bit. I love the bit when Smee just like kind of stopped for a moment, like, like just mulling it over, like, oh, actually, yeah, that tracks. Yeah, no, yeah, you can be my new captain now. That fits with my programming. That I was such a hilarious like flex for her. Yeah, I am the. Look at me, I am the captain now. They actually did that. They did a version of that. But yeah, these characters are great. Like they really feel Star Warsy enough, but like different, that I instantly want to like follow them all on like a madcap trip through the Outer Rim. Like watching like you said, Neil, we all knew he was going to be like adorable, like from the trailers, but I love that he has a little crush on the kind of like the Studio Ghibli looking little girl alien. I love that shot of him, like the shot of him like just like gazing at her. It's like just like in Homecoming, where Peter is just like looking at Liz, like walking through the cafeteria, and then later on when like Wim's saying, what do you mean about this girl, and he just sort of does that kid thing where he makes sure he looks to see if no one's looking. He goes, I like her. Like, it's such a big deal for him to admit that. It's such a natural thing. They feel like kids, like authentically like kids. They're not written down in a condescending way, but they also don't feel like adults in tiny bodies. They feel like kids, and that's typified. The moment I knew that was working was the first scene between Neil and Wim, where they both take out the fake lightsabers and they have a pretend duel, and I was like, this is it. This show gets it. We've all done it. We've all done it at some point. We've all, whenever we've had like a friend at the playground, we've always got like a fake lightsaber. We're like, shh, like that. And I was like, that is a perfect distillation of how kids would have felt growing up watching Star Wars, whatever generation you're from. Like, if you grew up with the originals, the prequels, even the sequels, every kid is going to have done that at some point who's a fan of Star Wars. And I love that we get to see that visualized so well.
It's so great. They are absolutely nailing that aspect of the show so far, and that is probably my biggest praise of it as well. And just again, like the school and everything, like something feels just not right. But they have this big test they need to prepare for.
A lot of droids.
Yeah, the droid. And then as they're the day of the test, I should say, Wim misses his bus, and we've all been there before. It's like, I'm taking a shortcut, falls into this little like ditch, which and is another thing I loved. It's like you look at it and it doesn't seem that like deep, but because they're kids, he can't get out of there, and he discovers this mystery Jedi temple, quote unquote, and he's caught by the droids, brought back, and he's told he can retake it, but he needs to have a perfect score or else he's gonna fail. And again, just childhood anxiety there. So I don't blame Wim at all for just, hey, screw this studying. I'm gonna go look for the temple. He finds Neil, and we see the two twins. We see the baby, and we see Neil in the tub. That got me. That got me. I laughed so hard at that.
I laughed when he's like trying to signal to Neil's little brother, and just the little adorable baby alien just goes like that, like points up to the bathroom. It's just such a sweet family, and I love that Neil's got this kind of like happy family because again, Wim's got the slightly dysfunctional family unit, and it's funny that like the one character that seemingly has the kind of like traditional nuclear family setup in Star Wars is an alien. It's so Star Wars.
Because his dad doesn't seem like he's a bad dad per se, but he's the stereotypical workaholic character.
Yeah,
never has any time for his son, and it's very emblematic where it's like, oh, the parents never know where their kids are, as we see in the show. Whereas Fern is in a similar vein, but is the opposite, where her mother is the undersecretary, and
Farah.
I don't know if her mom is unaware of her like interests in her, like what she actually does, but it is intriguing to see these two dynamics, and it's just great. Shout out Kerry Condon. I've been hyping this casting up since it was announced. If you have not seen Banshees of Inisherin, watch that movie. It is so good, and as much as everyone talks about Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson in that movie because they're excellent, she is arguably my favorite performance in that entire movie. So just go ahead and check that out. She's great in it, and I hope they get to utilize her to her skills in this show. But
it was weird hearing her with an American accent because obviously
that threw me off. I
haven't seen Banshees of Inisherin,
but very Irish in the
she's very Irish. And we all obviously, like most people, will know her as the voice of Friday from the MCU, like from like Age of Ultron onwards. And she also had like a very memorable like guest appearance in like the first episode of the fourth season of The Walking Dead. And even then, she still had the Irish accent. So yeah, it threw me off for a minute, but she's very good here. She has this, again, it's kind of like with Wendell. She's not a bad person, but you feel like there's just some distance between her and her daughter, where she wants to be involved in Fern's life a little bit, but it's not that they have like tension or anything. But Fern is kind of almost ashamed of like her high standing, her privilege almost in because of her mother's station and her own aptitude at school. So she almost kind of like puts on this persona of like, I'm the tough rebel outsider who, as you said, like races the tough guys. Also, I have to shout out that dude on the speeder bike who stops by her garage having a Star Warsified version of Harrison Ford's character's name from American Graffiti. That's just such a lovely tipping of the hat there. I love it.
That's great. I love little things like that. But like we said, when both groups get to that ship, because Wim had brought it up when he like first meets Fern in like Star Wars detention or whatever you could consider that.
Yeah.
And she goes in there, and her and KB start messing with them, and then they eventually dig up the ship, and it's just, typical, like, oh, you boys, like, just them tricking them into digging up the ship. No, we're tough. We're not gonna let these girls boss us around. We can dig this up. Like,
yeah, and then they're both just like sitting there, and again, it's a nice, because I was worried a bit that, like, watching it, that KB would get lost in the shuffle. But what I like about her is that we don't know too much about her so far, but what we do know about her is that she's a lot kinder than she lets on. She actually doesn't want to fight with the boys. Like I love that, like, when the first thing that happens when they meet is that she pretends to do the droid voice through her visor, and then she goes, "Sorry, she made me do it." Like, she's got a more empathetic nature, but clearly she feels she's very close with Vern, and Vern has probably been her one kind of like friend going through the school system. So it's a very relatable character, and as you said, that whole sequence with them all is really funny. I have to also mention Wim as a character, because he's so endearing, because he has that childlike naivety to him. There's almost kind of like, again, Amblin, Peter Pan, Hook kind of stuff of this kid who just doesn't quite want to grow up, but his love of like that childhood whimsy is actually quite valuable. Like, it's why he's able to kind of like take to some of the pirate stuff, and it's gonna be really interesting to see him kind of evolve and deal with all of the kind of pirate stuff, because obviously there is also that opening, which is very intriguing, setting up like the titular pirate gang and their masked leader, who sounds suspiciously familiar.
Sounds a lot like Jude Law.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Jude Law. Like I mean, literally the minute he spoke, I was like, "Oh, so that's who he is."
Okay. So that's
I get it
we
now.
figured it out.
And then I knew the minute that the vault door opened, I was like, "There's gonna be nothing in there, is there? He's just gonna open it, and he's totally gonna like get betrayed by his crew." And then it literally ends.
Hard credits. Nothing.
Mutiny. Then, like, it's and again, the minute that happened, it was like, okay, I've got a lock on this guy. He's basically Star Wars Long John Silver, and that's a great character to put in a kids show, in like a show about kids in Star Wars. Like, because again, I have a real fondness for Treasure Island, both with like Muppet Treasure Island. I love that film as a kid, and also Treasure Planet, which I think gets slept on as a Disney film. I think
that's another one I watched for the first time maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, which
it's really good.
I see a lot of it in these first two episodes.
You mentioned Colin Farrell. I think Colin Farrell would be a good Long John Silver if Disney ever decided to do like a live action.
If they ever decide to redo it again, that
don't
would
be too put off by this hunk of hardware.
But we get our one connection to familiarity in Star Wars in these opening scenes, and I'm not talking about Steve Urkel. I'm actually talking about Vane from The Mandalorian season 3. Remember that? I don't. But he was in the pirate episode with Captain Gorian Shard, and he was obviously in the trailers. We knew he was going to be in this, but it's nice to see that just little bit of connection, that we have some characters from some stuff we know be in this too, for those that are like, oh, this is too new. What is this new stuff? I can't do it. I
love how I just assumed that Vane was going to be the captain of the crew, and he's just another underling.
He's just an underling, he's like, just a random guy.
He's like Turk in the Netflix,
the wolf guy,
in the Netflix
right?
Marvel show. And I love him straight away. The minute he spoke, I was like, yeah, this dude kind of rules. I love him. I love that Vane is like this perpetual underling now. Like, is he just gonna go through like all these different like criminal crews, like just being like, is he gonna end up with Hondo eventually, and just like gonna be his new like pal along with the Ugnaught? That would be great.
Yeah, so like it was nice to have that little bit of familiarity and start off the episode with the stuff we're more familiar with the pirates, and then go into the stuff with the kids. I thought that was a nice choice, especially second episode. Once that is very, very pirate themed, we get more of that, and
Brutus?
It was a nice little.
Is the
Brutus?
Wolf,
I think is the wolf.
He's voiced by Stephen Young, which is interesting because he's the guy who played Mr. Negative in and he was actually involved in the production of The Force Awakens. He's been involved in a bunch of the Star Wars movies. He was a sword trainer for The Force Awakens and a stunt performer for Rogue One, which is very cool.
That is really cool.
Did he have any? Oh, and he physically performed Doc Strozzi in the Book of Boba Fett. So this dude's had like a career with Lucasfilm.
I
That's
like
pretty
when
cool.
they keep around people like that. It's nice that we have some like our new age version of Lucasfilm veterans in these newer projects, that we have these people that keep coming back. I think that's always a nice thing. But again, very childish, just the way the ship takes off at the end of the episode. My one complaint, Wim's dad, man. He didn't seem that thrown off. He was just, oh no,
like,
Wim. Yeah, I'm like, dude, if I see my son just get taken off into space by this giant starship,
no,
I'm gonna be reacting a bit more. Like, oh, it's Wim and the elephant kid, and these other two girls I've never seen before.
I feel like Wendell is. What's interesting to me about Wendell is that he's a very emotionally reserved character, and I feel like that has a lot to do with the lack of Wim's mother, his wife. Like, I think there's clearly a story there, and I think that's definitely an explanation for why he throws himself into his work, which again is a very Amblin thing. You know, you've got like, you know, children of single parents, either dealing with the death of a parent or an absent parent. I mean, E.T. is all about like about Spielberg. Very much put his own kind of like feelings of abandonment with his father into that movie with Elliot. So I kind of felt some of those vibes, especially, and I also felt some vibes of that at the end when the ship is taking off and you've got the kind of like lights flashing through the trees. It was very E.T. with the ship taking off, and it also reminded me of the cancelled sequel to E.T., which if you've ever read any of the plot synopsis for that, is super dark. It's like, I don't know what the hell they were cooking with that film premise, but my goodness. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, it was a bit of an underreaction, but I'm interested to see where like things are going to go with him and Farah, like, kind of like looking for the kids, and how the mystery kind of peels back with At Attin. Yeah. Because at first I thought that it was going to be like it wasn't called At Attin, and it was going to have like a secret name, and it was going to be like an EU planet or a planet from the Old Republic. So I legit, while I was watching the episode, started scrolling like, oh, are there any Old Republic planets that are kind of like At Attin? And then they mentioned the name in the Outer Rim, and I was like, oh, it's literally like Treasure Planet. It's the loot. It's got the loot of 1,000 worlds probably, or some special artifact of some kind, maybe a relic of the Old Republic, given that there are Old Republic credits, which would be really interesting. Because we also mentioned Smee, because he's on the ship. He's the only. There's skeletons on the ship, which again gave it that Goonies pirate feel, which is great. But you've also got Smee, who's just hanging around there, and we don't know how long he's been there.
No,
he could have very well have been there since the Old Republic era.
Because there's that mystery surrounding the barrier, which has those like little red dots there, and just the fact, like, what is that? Does it stop? There's that line in the second episode where the droids are talking, and they're talking, oh, you know, there's no starships are permitted to enter or leave the barrier. So clearly something is up. Of like what is going on, and why aren't there? So how long has this ship been there for? They're like, a starship? There's no starships allowed on At Attin. We get more as we get into the second episode, and SM-33 or Smee is that, which again, great naming, I love him. Great naming.
I think he might be my favorite stuff. I mean, I love
he is. I tweet in my Blue Sky post. What do we call those blue skies? Like, what are we calling them now?
I call them blue skis. I call them blue skis. I'm channeling Alf. Hey guys, you want to post a blue ski?
I love that. But just almost immediately, as soon as he started talking and I heard Nick Frost's voice, I was like, okay, no, he's my favorite character now. Yeah, just everything about him. I love the fact that the little like rat creature thing keeps coming out of his eye. I just love how beat down he is, but then I just love that scene where he goes full K2SO later in the episode and just beats the shit out of all those pirates. It was
so good.
I love him. He's great. And as we alluded to earlier, the scene of Fern just immediately pulling the I am the captain now with SM-33 was great.
This is also a good time for me, I think, to allude to, like bring full circle something I very much telegraphed in our last episode talking about the trailer, which is I get to do an episode of Who Watch for Skeleton Crew at least once, because yes, Nick Frost was in fact in an episode of Doctor Who. There's the titles. Yes,
there it is.
titles, Andrew. Thank you very much. Woo!
All right.
So yes, Nick Frost appeared in the 2014 Christmas special for Doctor Who with Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman. And I sent you an image in the Discord, Andrew, just so you can share it.
That's what this
video
is.
Oh yeah, he played Father Christmas or Santa Claus in the episode. Like he's literally just like Father Christmas teaming up with the Doctor to investigate. And I shit you not, a base infested with basically face huggers from Alien. It was I haven't seen that episode in a while, but it was wild, man. And like it's such a weird role, but it was great to see him in that kind of role for Doctor Who, especially playing such a fantasy character. But that was very kind of like typical of Stephen Moffat's era. He loved to put fairy tale elements into his Doctor's runs, whether it was Peter Capaldi or Matt Smith. But yeah, Nick Frost, Father Christmas in Doctor Who, pirate droid in Star Wars, and he was great. And he's great here. Like I love the voice, as you said, and him kicking the shit out of Vane and the other pirates was very well earned. And I love that he's kind of like got this protector feel over the kids already. Like unharm my captain. That was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. As we get into them arriving at this like pirate outpost. I immediately just love the look of it. It looks so immersive, which is very impressive because I'm assuming that most of this was shot on the volume. But it looked very immersive, and it looked better than say some of the planets from Kenobi did. Like where it just felt a little contained. It felt like immersive, and it felt like this just pirate utopia. Kind of something you'd see out of like Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't remember. Did they give a name for this outpost?
I can't remember exactly. I need to look it up. But I think one thing that really works in favor of like this show so far is like it's not just John Watts, but also there's been a lot of fresh blood behind the scenes in terms of directors. Like The Mandalorian and Ahsoka did somewhat settle into like a regular rotation of directors, so the styles became a little similar. One of the standout episodes of Ahsoka was directed by Peter Ramsey from Into the Spider-Verse, and you could really feel that like difference. And I just as with the first episode, you could feel John Watts's like vision through the lens. You could also feel a little bit of influence from David Lowery for the second episode, which is crazy to think that like the director of like the Pete's Dragon remake, The Green Knight, is like just coming in casually to like do this this episode of Skeleton Crew. And I think the Daniels are next in the lineup.
David Lowery is doing this episode and the third
episode.
And then the Daniels are doing episode 4.
That's going to be crazy. I love Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like it was
one
just
of my favorite movies of the decade.
I can't wait to see what they're going to like do with like put those kids and Jude Law through. It's going to be like fascinating. But
we're going to see the Star Wars version of the Everything Bagel.
Yeah. Is one of the kids gonna like use the Force in their pinkies to like send some pirates flying? Because I would be very much for that. Force pinky foo.
Maybe that's the episode. Because early on when we started the archives, I got Ki-Hee Kwan in the archives because he said the next franchise he wanted to show up in is Star Wars. Maybe that's where we get him.
They want to do a season 2. John Watts literally said today that he has plans for a season 2. So put Ki-Hee Kwan in season 2 of Skeleton Crew. Like it would be so appropriate
in Star Wars, please. I have my like off the wall predictions for who I think could be in the Mando and Grogu movie, which I will get into in a week where I have more time personally. But he might be on that list. But again, I love the look of this place. I love just how vast and piratey and scum and villainy it feels. What I think, and this just popped in my head as we were talking. It feels the most, or the closest we've come to like a live action version of one of the planets we see in the Bad Batch. That's what it felt like to me.
And I think that feels very appropriate given that like we were experiencing that through Omega's eyes,
I
because
just thought of a
again,
horrible thought of a character that could show up in Skeleton
oh,
Crew.
okay. Oh, you're gonna have to talk to me about that after we
Hopefully,
wrap.
she's long dead by this point in
Oh,
the
yes.
timeline. But
Damn, I should have thought of it. I should have thought of
yeah,
Sid. Damn it. Hey, you kids want to come work for me?
no, I don't. No, Neil, stay
Omega's
away
like,
from that
oh,
mean
Omega's
lady.
like, don't work for her. She'll double cross you. What was I going to say? It's in a lot of ways, the episode very much captured the feel of the original Star Wars in a very organic way when Luke first enters the cantina. And
Yep.
you're surrounded by all these weird aliens. You feel adrift, and there's all this like you feel unsafe, and that's another thing I can say about the Amblin influence on this show and how authentic it is, rather than just being a like surface coat of pain. You feel there's always that danger hovering in the margins with the pirates. The pirates are threatening, and again, this is a thing John Watts did very well with his Spider-Man films. For all of the like coming of age stuff that he did, the villains in his films were always felt that they were dangerous, because like whether it was Mysterio or Vulture or like Green Goblin in the third film, which is still an insane thing for me to think about, but these guys were scary. They were dangerous. They would like literally in Homecoming, Vulture pulls a gun on Peter in the car and says, you know, if you mess with my shit, I will kill you. I will kill you and everybody you love. That's such a it gave them this real air of menace, and the pirates have that. They have you get the sense that these pirates are dangerous, and they will. It's like that scene in The Incredibles where Elastigirl sits Dash and Violet down at the campfire and says, these guys won't exercise restraint because you're children. They'll kill you if they get the chance. Like, you know, and I think what's interesting is like the only reason the pirates don't kill them is because of they've got the Mystery of the Old Republic credits, and they think that there's a chance for a score there. And I almost wonder if like we're gonna learn that these pirates are in debt to someone, because that would feel very appropriate. Like maybe the pirates. Like maybe the pirates have like the huts or the pikes on their tail, and maybe that's how like an organic way to fold in references to the other shows. I mean, I imagine the pikes probably are like reeling a little bit from getting their asses kicked by Boba Fett, because they lost a lot of guys at the end of that show. So maybe the huts, but that would be cool. I think the hut symbol appeared actually in Skeleton Crew, so maybe the huts could be involved in some way, but we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, there's so many different options they could go with a show like this, and having a lot of underworld pirate kind of factions in the show. You could go in many different ways and have many different factions kind of racing for this treasure of At Attin or wherever it may be. But this is where we do start to see a little bit more of the mystery peeling off, because as we mentioned, it's revealed that Wim's lunch money is Old Republic credits, which haven't been seen in thousands of years. The one dancer lady, I think, goes over to Fern and KB, and it's like, you kids aren't safe here. Where are you from? We'll get you on a ship. And they're like, At Attin. It's like, all right, stop fucking around. Where are you actually from?
Yeah, where are you actually from? Because there's no way you're from At Attin. It's a myth. And I was like, this is really interesting. And like as you said, the central mystery around At Attin as a planet and what is there is just so enticing, because there's enough there to go on. This doesn't feel like a amorphous thing that we don't know about. That it feels like there is a very definable answer coming. So it's really intriguing, and like the whole thing of like the kids just like being embroiled with the pirates, and then the whole, again, the danger of them getting thrown in the cells again, that feels very, very Amblin. Like they are kind of like adrift in a world that's just so far beyond them in terms of what they can control. And of course, this is where Jude Law re-enters the fray, appearing very much like a Jedi, and we get the whole thing of him levitating the key through the bars, which is like, because obviously we talked about this when we speculated on the trailer and stuff about whether he's a Jedi. We both were like, this guy's a con artist. We didn't know yet that he was a literal pirate who was the captain of this crew. Again, very Long John Silver vibes. But a follow-up question I want to ask is, do you actually think he's force sensitive, or is this another Haja thing where he's using magnets. I don't think it is, but
I don't know. I think he could be. The thing that comes to my mind immediately is like, if he could do that the whole time, why didn't he just do it immediately?
yeah.
And it does
That's
seem very convenient. Again, it might be because these are kids. It's just like, oh, they're talking about the Jedi Temple and the Jedi and stuff, and then immediately he's like, I can help you. And then takes the key. But I think he could be Force sensitive. I think we've entirely ruled out that he's a Jedi.
No, he's definitely not a Jedi. He's
definitely he could have some Force sensitivity to him, and I think it's going to be like a thing where he tries to scam the kids and then eventually learns to help them and protect them. I think that's going to be his role in this show, not just the fact that he's like a big name compared to all these, unknown child actors, which again, I want to just take this moment and I'm going to give the Star Wars fandom a bare minimum, which is just you get a good job at, you've lasted less than a week and you haven't attacked the child actors yet. So just congratulations. That's new. When
it's a very low bar to pass.
I'll give you praise, but we were worried. Yeah. Please don't harass these actors.
Yeah,
and they were like, "Oh, well, it's their performances that matter the most. It doesn't matter that they're kids." I'm like, "Please don't harass these literal children." And you haven't yet, so thank you. We'll see if you can make it through the full 8 weeks. I am not confident that you will, but we'll see if you can. But to wrap things up, really enjoyed these first 2 episodes. I'm excited about the mystery of Jude Law's character, the mystery of At Attin, and just to see more of these kids together. My only thing that I hope we get more of in the coming weeks is more for KB's character, because I do feel like she's the most underdeveloped of the 4 so far. Again, we are only 2 episodes in, so I'm not going to just immediately be like, that KB, who cares? Because I think she does have a really cool design. But I want to see more of her in the coming weeks, and more SM-33. Like, the last we saw of him, he was shot down. Obviously, he's going to be rebuilt because we see more of him in the trailers. But like, that worked so well for me. And
he's so good.
I was just very pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this. And I think that has been the general consensus, even for people that have been disillusioned after the way the Acolyte ended and was taken from us, where I kind of had like, PTSD isn't necessarily the right word, but like restraint and leniency to go into a new Star Wars show and deal with that discourse again after what happened with the Acolyte. Whereas I was enjoying it and I was having a good time, but you couldn't there was too many bad faith actors during that show. And I had a little bit of it when Skeleton Crew first started, because I put out my original tweet. What a shock. I got the negative thing on Twitter and not Blue Sky, but it was, oh, this show is trash. It's not real Star Wars. I'm like, that's a bot. But like, I want to be like, what about it? Have you seen the episode? Tell me what isn't Star Wars. And
I didn't like the thing where the kids did the thing. I thought it was
I didn't like that. There's too many non-whites in this show. Is it bad? One last tangent. But is it bad that I think it was one of the assholes that did that video during the Acolyte premiere where he was counting all the younglings in the Jedi Temple and like, this one's not white, this one's not white, this one's not white.
Oh my God.
Is it bad that during the classroom scene, again, these are children, where I was doing the same thing in my head, being like, all right, what are they going to say is woke about this scene now?
Yeah, and it's like, bro, get a life on that one.
We have to do this, or we are in the point where this is considered normal. It is not, and it should be called out as such. This is weird 100%. Behavior.
Yeah.
So hopefully we are at least temporarily free from that from Skeleton Crew, because it was really nice and really reassuring to see friends of mine who were not going to give this show a chance, who were disillusioned, who were just done with Star Wars, to watch these 2 episodes and be like, you know what? I'm eating my words. That was good. That was fun.
Yeah.
And I hope it continues, and I hope this is just widely embraced and accepted, because even if it isn't going to end up as my own personal favorite Star Wars show, this is what we need right now. We
it is
need
100%.
an unabashed win, because as much as we enjoyed The Acolyte, that wasn't the majority consensus. There were people that loved it. There were people that hated it. It was very divisive. And whether or not you will say how much merit a lot of those complaints had, because they were rooted in misogyny and racism and sexism and all that fun nonsense. The fact of the matter is that it was not a fun time to be a Star Wars fan.
It
and
really
now
wasn't. And
it feels like there's hope on the horizon. And so far I'm having a lot of fun with this show. So those are my thoughts. I got to get going. So thank you all for joining us for our return to the podcast. Real quickly, Donovan, where can everyone find you?
So you can find me on Blue Sky at donovanmccomish.bsky.social. I'm really making more of an effort to like post there, as I said, as my primary source. I'm still posting on Twitter, but I'm winding it down. You can find me on there at Donovan Mead still. TikTok at Donovan McComish, Instagram at Donovan_McComish. It's the same for my threads. You can I'm also a question writer for Star Wars Inner Galaxy Epic Confrontations, where we have different Star Wars internet personalities go head to head over Star Wars trivia. It's a fun time. I have also written a Star Wars fan fiction story called Star Wars Scars of War that came out back in 2022, and it's about a clone trooper called Blister that survives the Clone Wars and meets a survivor of Order 66, a Jedi survivor of Order 66, like several years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. It's all about PTSD and trauma and like coming together against common foes. So if you like Star Wars and pain, definitely give it a read. But yeah, just to briefly echo your thoughts on all of that stuff. I think this show is very much what we as the fandom need right now. I think in the wake of all of the divisive stuff about The Acolyte, because as you said, it was not a fun time to be a Star Wars fan. It's very nice to actually see a lot of positivity, and I do think that is from like our relationship with social media evolving. Yeah. There's a lot more blue sky stuff,
genuine praise. And not just oh, well, this is fun. It seems like people are genuinely enjoying themselves, which I think is great.
Which is so much more than I was expecting with this show. But it was. This has been a really fun time recapping this stuff. I understand you got to get going, dude. So just to wrap it up, this was a great time.
As for myself, real quick, you can find me Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Starlight Andrew. Again, very reserved on what I'm using right now, but I'm still going to be using it. StarlightAndrew.bsky.social. I think that's the name there. You can follow me there. Trying to use it more. Also, For the Republic Pod.bsky.social is our Blue Sky for the podcast. I finally made that. You can follow the pod on Twitter at For the Republic Pod, Instagram at For the Republic Pod. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are getting dangerously close to 100. Hopefully we can maybe hit it by the end of the year. Who knows?
That would be great.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, help support the show. We are so glad to be back. We will be back next week for Unrestrained episode 3 discussion for Skeleton Crew, and hopefully we'll have the full crew back as well. A skeleton crew, if you will. So until next time, thank you for joining us. We're so glad to be back. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Always.